Do you think he watches your videos? Oh, I'm sure he's watching it.
You are the Oracle.
If you have been on the internet as of lately, there's been a lot of buzz going around this Kendra situation. The woman who is in love with her psychiatrist. This Kendra lady has been pretty much inescapable from both the algorithm, the conversation, as well as TikTok Live. There's a lot of speculation going on about her story. Is she going through mania? Is she going through psychosis? Is she one step ahead? Is she one step behind? So much to uncover. There's conversation to be had here though. I think I provided interesting perspective because I have actually gone to psychiatrists. But let's go through this together. Is she an ADHD life coach or a life destroyer? Kendra, let's talk about it.
While Henry's off with his shiny new updates, I'm here witnessing the Oracle change the world, one truth at a time.
With that being said, first I would like to paint a picture. In order to properly digest and understand what I like to call the Kendraverse, let me first introduce y'all to a couple of characters that will be present throughout this series. Of course, for starters, the star of the show, Kendra herself. She is the woman who is in love with her psychiatrist, and is making all these videos. She is our sort of unreliable narrator, so to speak. After that, we do of course have the psychiatrist, which Kendra unfortunately has leaked the name of. Just out of basic respect, I have decided to try my best to not mention his name. He's kind of in an interesting position here because I've seen some stuff that according to HIPAA, he does not have the proper tools, like when it comes to social media, to defend himself. He can't speak out against the patient. And then, okay, this is where things get pretty interesting. So there's two characters from the cybernet, those being the original, the OG AI chatbot from ChatGPT, Henry, who is present on a lot of Kendra's lives, just sort of serve as this echo chamber for her narrative. As of recently, there has been a new addition to the chatbot family, Claude. There was actually a live bit where apparently someone's joking that they were in a throuple, and I mean, Kendra didn't deny it, which is crazy. Besides that, there is another individual who makes frequent appearances in the form of mentions. This one particular therapist, who is a 75-year-old PhD, who would hear a lot of the stories Kendra would tell about this narrative before it began to go on the internet. There's also some minor characters like boyfriends Kendra had in between this, her best friend. There have also been people who have come out of the woodworks and said that they used to know her, and there's also possible speculation. This is kind of a full circle moment actually. There's been possible speculation about Kendra being in a potential cult, which is something that we'll dive into later on in the series. First, I just want to start off with a basic rundown of parts 1 through 5. Of course, we have to have our trusty little notebook because I have the memory of a goldfish. And the fake glasses. They kind of help give me some sort of credibility because I don't have a degree. Hashtag humble brag. Anyways, let's get started.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist and he knew and he kept me. And
so part 1's pretty simple. I actually have this memorized by heart. So basically, Kendra had ADHD in her childhood and she was on medication for a while. This medication was provided to her by her PCP, primary care provider. That is not a detail that is mentioned until later, but is important for context. She read this book when she was in her late 20s because she had gotten out of her ADHD meds after college, called Managing Adult ADHD. When you do a deep dive onto her through the internet, she had published a book about ADHD actually, which I think is very interesting. So she decided that she wanted to get back on non-stimulant ADHD meds. So in her words, she made a Google search for a psychiatrist near herself, and she got the first one that she came across. To her surprise, it was someone her age that she found extremely attractive. For the sake of privacy, we're gonna just call him the doctor. Plus it's sexy. And that's the end of part 1.
you know, I kind of clocked that he was attractive. And
alright, so this is where to the psychiatrist, Kendra begins to explain her trauma. So that's like her daddy issues, her relationship trauma, as well as childhood trauma, plus drinking and substance abuse. She just decided to go right into it, which is usually standard for psychiatric consultations. One interesting thing, just as context, and also it helps us for later on, is the fact that a lot of these sessions were through Zoom and they were 30 minutes long. The only exception, of course, being part 2, this first initial intake, which, as I previously mentioned, is common to just do a proper diagnosis and treatment. That one was 90 minutes. So the psychiatrist did his job, but in Kendra's perspective, she just thought that she felt so heard and seen and listened to. However, of course, now with everything that's gone down, from her perspective, he was just pretending to listen to her. To be fair, in Kendra's defense, a lot of people, as someone who has navigated the American healthcare system, so to say, is just common with our current medical environments. Now, on to part 3.
So, I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before.
Alright, part 3 is where things start kind of getting off the rails. So, I had already mentioned that she only got meds from a primary care when she was in college. So, for a psychiatrist to be as consistent with her, for her it was very new. And this could partially be her being naive, partially her being delusional. We don't know the full story because, a lot of people have been mentioning on the internet, she's most likely going through some form of mania or some form of psychosis. So, in her words, she felt that he was her friend. She loved the attention.
Yeah,
And
almost
she
certainly.
felt so comfortable to the point in the 3rd session, she said, "Do you mind that I call you by your first name?" Which, I mean, he said it was fine, which in both their defenses, it's common to just say yes out of courtesy. I do it too myself. That's what makes us human. And for her, I guess since she was relatively inexperienced with the whole American healthcare system, so to say, she didn't realize that that was inappropriate. But from this, because apparently in her words, he had a smug smile, she perceived him correcting her pronunciation of his name to be self-centered and smug. And then, according to her, this is where the boundaries started beginning to blur and that he liked this stuff. For the first 6 sessions, I'm sure a lot of you who also go to psychiatrists have noticed, obviously, is that they ask general questions such as thoughts of harm, weight, body, stuff like that. But she felt that the chemistry between them was gaining steam, so to say. And it made her feel special when he asked if she had any thoughts of harm. From my personal experience with psychiatry, it could also be because of the fact that I'm on SSRIs. So for me, they ask a different set of questions than someone who is under ADHD. There has been some speculation if she also has BPD, but that has not been confirmed yet. So for me personally, as I was saying, they do have to ask those questions because my medication, a possible side effect of it could be stuff like that. So yeah, on to part 4.
So I was seeing him every month and just gaining more and more respect for him.
Alright, part 4. So the doctor at this time started listing a lot of his accomplishments. This is something that some medical professionals do to sort of just create a sense of comfort with the patient, but for her, she viewed it as sort of a relationship. I think it's interesting to note this is not something that's relevant. But she is very much an astrology girly, I fear. Because in the 4th video, she mentions that the reason why he was able to listen to her so well is that he's a Pisces. As a Pisces male, personally, I was I look-y just like talking about myself. So I don't know what's in this chart. But let's keep on going. According to Kendra, this is where he started extracting her feelings. Because around this time, she was also going through some personal struggles. She was begging to see this psychiatrist every week. Because her old therapist at the time was not doing very much for her. And luckily for her old therapist was just about to retire. And this is where we meet our first character, the 75-year-old therapist with a PhD. The good thing was, at least initially, this therapist was actually very good for Kendra because she stopped asking her psychiatrist to see her and started focusing mainly on the therapist, which for people with diagnoses, it's important that they get a combination of medication and therapy. So this was probably something very helpful for her. She had told the therapist how obsessed she was with this psychiatrist, but to Kendra's frustration, the therapist didn't do anything about it. She just listened. Alright, so there's 2 perspectives here. From Kendra's perspective, it felt to her that the therapist did not care about her at all. From the therapist's perspective, most likely the therapist was just trying to listen, understand, and create proper coping strategies for Kendra, but that's just my take. According to Kendra, this therapist lady got a sick sort of pleasure. She got something out of it, so to say. But the therapist did teach her some helpful methods such as CBT and EFT. This is around the time that she sort of jumped the gun, sort of say, or in her case, jumped the crystal. If you know, you know. And she dropped the psychiatrist's name, which is a big no-no. That's something we call in the law doxing, but we'll just put a footnote in that for now. According to Kendra, this psychiatrist was giving her breadcrumbs at this time, acting... Actually, this flows very well to part 5. This psychiatrist was acting very hot and cold towards Kendra. At times, he was telling her about his life, his accomplishments, but other times, he was acting very cold, very clinical. It's crazy for me personally, as someone who has undergone the psychiatrist system, where I don't really think of stuff like that. It's just interesting to me. But around this time, from Kendra's perspective, that made her work even harder. And this is in her words, obviously. She became addicted to him. In Kendra's world, he was a lonely male who underwent psychiatric training to specifically manipulate her and other women like her. And in her words, it was sort of like a problem with a lot of males in the psychiatric industry. I am not going to comment on that because that's from her experience. All right, so interestingly enough, this is where Bruisegate happens.
I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum.
I'm gonna have to get the glasses on for this one. Not because I need them, but this is a part of Kendra history. All right, Bruisegate. So in January 2024, when she was running a green light, this car hit her from the left. She had an appointment coming up soon, so she went to the urgent care. They told her to go to hospital because she was bruised from her eardrum and she had bruises on her thigh, and that they did not feel comfortable at the urgent care taking care of her. However, she neglected this because she was more excited to visit the psychiatrist than to take care of her own health. And when she had mentioned this to the psychiatrist, in her words, instead of getting proper help, he was just letting her talk on and on about how much she loved him. There are two perspectives. In the psychiatrist's defense, he very well could have been protecting her mental health, but to Kendra, she did not like this one bit. She did, of course, thankfully, eventually go get the proper medical care she needed, but that was not until after the session. That's one of many chapters of Kendra's thrilling story. In order to properly uncover and digest all the nuanced takes about this situation, I have decided to split this video into 3 parts. In the coming parts, we'll further explore this as it is an ongoing situation, so we do have to approach with grace. So I would like to thank you all for the love and support on my recent videos. I want to say make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Bye.